Do you ever feel as if your prayers of the Rosary aren't reaching heaven? Like you've been faithfully praying for years, decades even, but the peace you seek still feels out of reach? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. This is the story of Father Michael, a quiet parish priest from a small town in Ohio. For many years, he led his flock in reciting the Rosary every day. He prayed with devotion. But I still feel like there's something missing. That was until a quiet retreat changed everything. What he discovered was not new. It was something ancient, forgotten by many people. But when he brought it back to his parish, life began to change. Today, I want to share with you the forgotten truth about the Rosary and how it can transform your prayer life, just like Father Michael and his parishioners did. In towns across America, from the quiet hills of Kentucky to the sunlit porches of Arizona, millions of faithful Catholics pray the Rosary every day. They clutch those familiar beads with trembling hands, whispering the prayers that their mothers and grandmothers had taught them long ago. For many people, the Rosary is a comfort, daily companion, a link to heaven. But for some people, it still feels like something is missing. Why do I still feel so anxious when I pray? Why do words feel so far away? These are the silent questions that linger in Father Michael's heart. And he's not alone. Because as Saint Padre Pio once revealed, most Catholics do not pray the Rosary the way God intended. Not with the heart, not with intention, not with the kind of love that opens the doors of grace. But what if one small change could widen that gate? What if the Rosary or Rosary had more than just the usual meaning? What if it was one spiritual weapon, one lifeline, one bridge from your suffering to God's peace? One rainy afternoon in early spring, Father Michael found himself sitting next to a quiet old man after daily Mass. That man, Father Thomas, served for decades as a missionary priest before retiring to a small town in Pennsylvania. There was something peaceful about him, something that moved Father Michael's restless heart. As they talked, Father Michael shared his struggle. "I pray the Rosary every day," he confessed, "but it feels empty, like I'm moving beads through my fingers." Father Thomas nodded slowly, his eyes shining with kindness. "You're not alone," he said softly. "I used to feel the same way, until I learned how Saint Padre Pio prayed." At the mention of the saint's name, something stirred deep within Father Michael. Father Thomas continued, "He said that 99% of Catholics recite the Rosary the wrong way, not out of rebellion but out of habit. We rush, we mumble, we forget to meet Our Lady with the heart." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an old prayer card, its edges worn with age. On the back are 5 principles of handwriting. Padre Pio called this Rosary of the Heart. When you pray with intention, with love, and meditate on the mysteries, not just saying them, but feeling them, everything changes. That night, Father Michael brought the card home. He placed it next to the Rosary on the nightstand, and for the first time in many years, he did not just recite the Rosary. I prayed for that. Slow, lightly, grain by grain, tear by tear, mystery after mystery. And heaven began to respond. The next morning, something was different. At first, Father Michael could not explain. The light coming through his window looked softer. The silence in his room deepened. It is as if a veil is lifted from the ordinary, revealing something divine beneath it. He continued to pray the Rosary every evening, following the 5 spiritual principles of Saint Padre Pio. He is no longer in a hurry. He no longer let his thoughts wander. Each Hail Mary becomes a whispered offering of love. Each mystery is a window into the life of Christ. And slowly, quietly, the transformation began. People started to pay attention. During Mass, his homilies took on a new tenderness. Parishioners said they felt seen, heard, understood, as if Father Michael was no longer just talking, arrive them, but from a deeper place. The normally quiet confessional is now filled with souls returning after many years of separation. One morning, an elderly woman named Mrs. Johnson came to see him after Mass with tears in her eyes. "Dad," she whispered, "when you prayed for me last week, the anxiety I had suffered for 20 years disappeared. I don't know what happened, but I felt free." Father Michael smiled, not out of pride, but out of surprise. He knows that's not him. That is the Rosary. That's Mary. That is the hidden power that Padre Pio spoke of, the power that is only unlocked when prayer is offered from the heart, with reverence and true surrender. Soon, he began teaching his parishioners the same method. A small group began meeting every Tuesday after Mass to pray the Rosary together, slowly, with meditation and intention. Stories of healing, reconciliation, and peace began to spread in the community. Marriage is mended, addictions lose their control. A young man who was about to leave the faith turned around and said, "When I heard the way you prayed, I felt like God was waiting for me." Father Michael still keeps the old card with Padre Pio's 5 principles in his Bible. And every time he picked up the Rosary, he remembered his first real night pray it. It's not just beads anymore. It's a bridge between heaven and earth. A channel for grace to flow freely, not only into his life, but through it to others. The news began to spread quietly at first. It's not in the title or announcement. It was the warm glow on people's faces as they left the church. Neighbors who have not spoken for many years now see each other laughing and joking after an evening of praying the Rosary. In the silent miracle of a dying man, he passed away peacefully after hearing a mysterious prayer at his bedside. Father Michael's small prayer group grew. What started with 5 elderly parishioners on a Tuesday afternoon quickly became 15, then 20. Then almost the entire front row was filled with souls longing for something deeper. But it wasn't the numbers that moved Father Michael, it was the transformation. These are people in their 70s, even 80s, who have been praying the Rosary all their lives, but now, for the first time, they experience it, feel it in their bones. Their eyes closed, tears streaming down their time-worn cheeks as they whispered, "Hail Mary, full of grace." One evening, as golden light streamed through the stained glass windows, a gentleman named Harris stood up. He was 82 years old, a Korean War veteran, tough as nails. However, his voice trembled as he spoke. "I've prayed the Rosary 1,000 times," he said, "but until now, I've never really met her, never really let her lead me to him." The chapel was silent. Everyone knew what he meant. The Rosary is no longer just a tradition, it has become an encounter. And so, the message spread. Some people take it home, praying slowly every night before going to bed, like Padre Pio did. Others began teaching their grandchildren. Some people shared it with friends at nursing homes, where lonely hearts have now found peace and purpose. Even young people are beginning to ask questions drawn not by sermons, but by the quiet joy emanating from their grandparents' faith. What Padre Pio once called the weapon of this age is now used gently and prayerfully by a community that has learned to do so. How our prayer is just as important, that thing we pray. The Rosary, once a habit, has now become a revival. And in the midst of it all is a simple truth. When even one soul begins to pray from the heart, heaven takes notice and the world begins to change. Just when everything seemed to be blooming, challenges struck again. A rare, violent storm hit the small countryside where Father Michael lived and served. Trees fell, power lines were cut, homes were damaged, and the church, where so many people found their faith, was struck by lightning, causing the steeple to catch fire. The community was shocked. For many people, church is more than just a building, it's where they find light in the darkness. Standing in the pouring rain, watching the fire burn down the church roof, many hearts were broken. An elderly woman whispered, "We prayed with all our hearts. Why did this happen?" In the days that followed, Everything was silent. The prayers became less frequent, and the eyes of the community became heavy with disappointment. Father Michael, although heartbroken, continued to visit the charred remains of the church every day to pray, alone. Then one evening, as he was kneeling in the ashes, his shoulder was gently touched. That was Mr. Harris, a veteran who cried when sharing his encounter with the Virgin Mary. "Father," he said, his eyes shining in the darkness, "the church may have burned down, but our hearts cannot be destroyed. We still have you. We still have the Rosary." Father Michael paused for a moment and then smiled through his tears. "You're right. Our faith lies not in the building, but in the prayers we continue to offer." That night, they set up a small wooden table in the churchyard, placed a statue of the Virgin Mary and a bouquet of white flowers. No roof, no lights, just heart, rosary, and steadfast faith. And little by little, the community returned, under the open sky. When spring returned to the small town, flowers bloomed in the churchyard, where Father Michael and the community continued to pray the Rosary together every evening. There was no longer any need for the roof above, but strangely, they found themselves without it. They said, "The sky is our roof, and Our Lady is the wall that protects us." That tragic event did not shatter the community. In fact, it rekindled their faith in each and every one of them, stronger than ever. From families that had never spoken to each other, they now knelt together to pray. Young people, once thought to have fallen away from the church, returned, moved as they prayed the Rosary with their parents and grandparents. Father Michael, now older, with more grey hair, still clutches the old Rosary beads, a gift from a stranger many years ago. During an evening prayer, he shared, "There is no tragedy strong enough to break a Rosary heart. Every prayer is the thread that connects us to heaven, and when a community prays together, even hell hesitates." From that day on, the townspeople called that place Rosary Garden. Not because of the beauty of the landscape, but because every person who has been there has become a flower, blooming with faith, hope, and prayer. When the video ends, you can say, "If this story touches your heart, please share it with your loved ones, especially those who may feel lost or disconnected. And if you believe in the power of the Rosary, write in the comments, 'Mother Mary, please guide my heart.' Let the world know that no one is too old to start again. All it takes is a Rosary and a heart ready to reach for heaven." The story of Father Michael and the small community in the peaceful town reminds us of a truth always associated with life. Sincere faith, although humble, can bring about extraordinary things. In our later years, we may no longer have the same physical health as before, but our hearts, if we still pray, are still the most powerful place where God resides. Praying the Rosary is not just an ancient ritual. It is one living bridge connects us to Jesus Christ and His Mother Mary. When you pray the Rosary every day, you are saying, "Lord, I am here. I still believe, still love, still hope." Whether in a modest room or living alone in a nursing home, remember, you are never alone. Every prayer, every Rosary is a light, dispelling the darkness of fear, illness, and loneliness. Start with just one decade, and you will see heaven is closer than you think. Just a sincere Hail Mary is all it takes.